Since the Trinity nuclear weapons test took place in 1945, the United States has built incredibly sophisticated missiles, aircraft, and submarines capable of launching nuclear weapons at targets anywhere on Earth. These missiles, aircraft, and submarines compose America's nuclear triad and give the US government 3 different ways to fire nuclear weapons at enemy targets. Limited by arms control treaties, including New START signed in 2010, the US has about 3,800 bombs in active stockpile, including 1,300 to 1,750 currently placed on intercontinental ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, gravity bombs, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles. The triad gives the military multiple options to strike an enemy first, while also making it nearly impossible for America's arsenal to be completely destroyed, meaning America could launch retaliatory nuclear strikes. The most visible part of the nuclear triad are Air Force bombers that can drop either gravity bombs or cruise missiles. The 2 American bombers currently capable of carrying nuclear weapons are the B-52 Stratofortress and the stealth B-2 Spirit. Built from 1952 to 1962, the B-52 has 8 engines and can carry 70,000 pounds of munitions anywhere on Earth with aerial refueling. Its nuclear payload consists of warheads loaded onto air-launched cruise missiles. Because the B-52 is not stealth, it would likely be shot down if it tried to enter enemy airspace to deliver a nuclear payload. Instead, it has standoff capabilities, meaning it can launch a cruise missile that will travel to the target so the B-52 can stay away from enemy air defenses. Like the B-52, the B-2 Spirit can travel anywhere on Earth with aerial refueling, and because it is difficult to detect on radar, it can penetrate enemy airspace. Built in the 1990s at a cost of over $2 billion per aircraft, the 20 B-2s in service can carry gravity bombs that can be dropped over an enemy target. The B-2s are stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, while the 76 B-52s in service are located at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana and Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. The U.S. Navy's Ohio-class nuclear submarines are considered the most survivable part of the nuclear triad. Because their mission is to remain hidden underwater and await launch orders, it would be nearly impossible for an enemy to find and destroy these submarines. Powered by a nuclear reactor and only limited by the amount of food it can carry on board, Ohio-class submarines on patrol travel beneath the ocean surface with dozens of nuclear warheads. With 24 missile tubes loaded with Trident II submarine-launched ballistic missiles capable of carrying up to 14 warheads each, the Ohio-class subs could technically carry 336 warheads capable of hitting 336 different targets. However, arms control treaties in force limit the Ohio's to 20 missiles each, and submarines on patrol usually carry 4 warheads per missile. Even at 25% capacity, these submarines, shorter than the length of 2 football fields, can cause immense destruction. Even when underwater, the Pentagon can communicate with the submarines and give launch orders using very low-frequency radio waves that penetrate through water. The U.S. military has VLF stations in Maine and Washington state. There are currently 14 Ohio-class submarines equipped with nuclear SLBMs, and 3 to 4 are deployed at any given time. Named after civilian paramilitary forces who fought in the Revolutionary War, the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile is a 3-stage rocket that can carry a single warhead 6,000 miles. There are currently 400 to 450 deployed in underground silos split across Minot Air Force Base, Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, and Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. In nuclear warfare, there are 2 main scenarios the United States could face: a first strike or a second strike. In a first strike situation, the president decides to launch a preemptive nuclear strike against enemy targets in order to try and prevent the enemy from launching a nuclear strike of its own. A second strike would happen if an enemy launched nuclear missiles first and America responded by launching in return. A first strike would give the government time to make a decision and would probably utilize the land-based ICBMs or aircraft. Using a B-2, the enemy would have little, if any, knowledge of the incoming nuclear bombs and would not be able to prepare. If more warheads were needed, the land-based Minuteman missiles could be the next option, as there are hundreds of them deployed. In a first strike scenario, the submarines may be last to be used because they would be much easier to track down if they launched missiles. If an enemy country like Russia or China launched a first strike of its own at the United States, the president would have only minutes to respond. A number of the enemy missiles would likely target the land-based ICBMs, so those would probably be used first in a counterattack. From the White House, Air Force One, or a communications device called the football, the president can transmit a launch order to the Pentagon, which then follows a war plan and instructs launch crews. From the time the president is told an attack is incoming, America could launch in about 20 minutes. One of the main reasons for having a nuclear triad is to prevent the entire arsenal from being destroyed and preserving second strike capability. Because America's arsenal is spread out across the country and the world's oceans, adversaries have little chance of being able to neutralize all of it. America's main rivals, Russia and China, also have nuclear triads, so the United States has little hope of destroying their nuclear capabilities. According to a military science theory called mutually assured destruction, the nuclear triad has actually prevented nuclear war. Because all of the major powers can destroy each other no matter what, no one has the incentive to launch first. If Russia deploys its arsenal against the United States, America will counterattack and both countries will be largely obliterated. The opposite is also true and was a major reason the Cold War did not lead to nuclear conflict. A similar theory is the stability-instability paradox. It states that nuclear powers are less likely to go to war directly because of their destructive capabilities, and therefore make the world more peaceful. However, because the great powers don't fight each other directly, they instead fight proxy wars which make regions unstable. The Vietnam War and the Soviet War in Afghanistan are examples of proxy wars in which one power backed a regional force fighting against a great power. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine has America backing the Ukrainian government, while Russia supports separatists fighting in the eastern part of the country. But despite theories that nuclear weapons can prevent wars between great powers, the fact remains that the United States, Russia, and to a growing extent China, all have the ability to cause catastrophic loss of life in a matter of minutes. The US and Russia both have their missiles on high alert, meaning they can be launched very quickly. In recent years, there has been a push to de-alert much of the nuclear force both countries have by making it physically difficult to launch ICBMs. If de-alerting were implemented, the US and Russia might place large concrete blocks on top of their land-based missile silos. These blocks would take time to move, and any movement would be easily observed by spy satellites. Going further, the warheads themselves could be removed from the missiles, and the technical process of reinstalling them would make it impossible to launch the missiles quickly. The main rationale for de-alerting is that there have been instances in the past where the US and Russia have both received faulty intelligence pointing to a massive enemy nuclear launch. On November 9, 1979, multiple military facilities, including the Pentagon and NORAD headquarters, received reports that the Soviet Union had launched 2,200 nuclear ICBMs at the United States. The President's National Security Advisor was notified, and nuclear-armed bombers were prepared for takeoff. Minutes before President Carter was going to be notified in order to respond, military satellites showed that no missiles were incoming. A training simulation had accidentally run on the main computers at NORAD headquarters. In 1983, a Soviet early warning station's satellites indicated 5 American ICBMs had been launched towards Russia. A Soviet officer named Stanislav Petrov suspected the satellites were malfunctioning because an American first strike would almost certainly have involved hundreds or thousands of missiles in order to try and prevent a Soviet response. Petrov waited to send the news up the chain of command until he received confirmation from ground radar, which never came because there were no missiles. The satellites had mistaken sunlight reflecting off clouds as nuclear missiles. Had Petrov not waited, Soviet leaders would almost certainly have ordered a massive attack on the United States. The debate about the rationale of maintaining such destructive capabilities comes as America's nuclear triad is at an inflection point. The weapons and their launch platforms are old and and replacements will cost hundreds of billions of dollars. The B-52s will be 90 years old if they remain in service until 2050 as planned. The highly secretive B-21 Raider, currently under development, is expected to replace the B-52 and B-2 bombers and will be able to drop gravity bombs and standoff weapons. The Ohio-class submarines are slated to be replaced by the Columbia-class in the early 2030s. 12 ships are planned at a cost of $9 billion per submarine, and each will carry 16 Trident SLBMs. The Minuteman ICBMs will be replaced by a 3-stage rocket called the Ground-Based Strategic Deterrent that is currently under development. Defense contractor Northrop Grumman is currently the only company bidding on the GBSD, which is expected to cost over $250 billion during its lifetime. The nuclear warheads themselves are also old, and many will operate longer than originally intended. Because atmospheric and underground nuclear tests are banned by international treaty, the US military uses supercomputers to simulate explosions and extend the weapons' lifespans. Official US government policy supports the elimination of nuclear weapons worldwide, but as Russia and China modernize their nuclear forces, the US military clearly believes the nuclear weapons are worth keeping. Even if nuclear deterrence keeps other powerful nation-states at bay, America's nuclear triad wouldn't be useful if a terrorist group or non-state actor built and used a nuclear device against Americans. In a world with nuclear proliferation, there will always be a threat of catastrophic damage caused by these weapons. Nuclear arms also damage public opinion of nuclear power, a relatively safe energy source that emits very little carbon into the environment. In recent decades, multiple treaties between the US and Russia have significantly reduced the nuclear stockpiles of the two countries down from the tens of thousands of warheads each had during the Cold War. However, these treaties do not constrain China, who has been growing its nuclear arsenal in recent years. North Korea continues its nuclear weapons development, and Iran harbors nuclear ambitions. The new launch platforms will cost American taxpayers billions and possibly over $1 trillion, with some contracts having only one bidder. But because of existing threats and new launch platforms already being built, America's nuclear triad on land and in the air and sea will likely remain for decades.